pure historical. Be still my heart. Welcome to the Time Treadmill. I'm Ron, and these are my sweaty thoughts about Doctor Who. When Doctor Who was first created in 1963, part of the sales pitch was that it was an educational program for children. It would lure in the kids by doing great science fiction stories like the Daleks and Keys of Marinus and the Sensorites, but it would alternate those with historical stories to teach children about pivotal moments in history. And so we also got stories like Marco Polo, the Aztecs, the Highlanders, stories in which the only science fictional element was the existence of the TARDIS and the Doctor and the companions. Over time, those pure historical stories fell out of favor, and I understand why, but the fact remains that the pure historicals are among my favorites. I think Marco Polo is one of the greatest stories in Doctor Who history, and stories like the Smugglers, or the Romans, or the Massacre at St. Bartholomew's Eve. They're phenomenal stories that serve their purpose very well, and they prove that Doctor Who does not require the presence of aliens and spaceships and ray guns to be interesting and engaging and exciting. With today's story, Black Orchid, it's the first pure historical since Highlanders, way back early on in the Second Doctor era. It's been well over a decade, going on 15 years even, since there was actually a pure historical story. And even worse than that, today's story, Black Orchid, marks the last pure historical ever. Since this one aired in 1982, there has never been another Doctor Who story that was purely historical in nature with no science fictional elements. The closest the show has come in the modern era to a pure historical was in the 13th Doctor's first season, in stories like Rosa and Demons of the Punjab, and there's a reason that those two are absolutely my favorites of that season. Rosa in particular is a phenomenal piece of storytelling, and I'm really looking forward to getting back there again. But it wasn't quite a pure historical. They still felt the need to throw in a time-traveling space Nazi to add peril to the situation. And the same thing with Demons of the Punjab. They had to add these observing aliens to spice up the story somehow, where it absolutely didn't need it. In both cases, I think the additions were completely worthless and undermine the stories themselves that just didn't need those elements. But here, with Black Orchid, we have a pure historical in its finest form. This is a story that doesn't require anything except history. It's set in 1925 England. It's a murder mystery. It's, again, a slight commentary on British colonialism, or I guess more accurately, British expeditionism, if that's a word. And it proves very nicely that pure historicals work just fine. This is a great story, and I highly recommend it. In addition to being the last pure historical, it's also unique in being the first two-part story since all the way back in the Sontaran experiment in the first season of the fourth Doctor. So, 8 years previous? And to my recollection, there won't be another two-parter while the show remains in its 25-minute format. Obviously, once it goes to 45-minute episodes, there are two-parters, but those are, for all practical purposes, comparable to a four-part story with the shorter 25-minute episodes. So, Black Orchid stands proud and tall as a truly unique and exemplary story in Doctor Who history. And I really, really wish that Chris Chibnall and the other current production staff at Doctor Who would take note of how well a pure historical can work. Now, tomorrow, on the other hand, is the polar opposite of a pure historical. And more happily, tomorrow marks the beginning of the end of Adric. By the end of the weekend, I will be well quit of him, and I will be overjoyed. I'll see you tomorrow.